Hello traders and welcome to today's market update. My name is Nick, going to be going through some of the major Forex currency charts with you, seeing for some potential trade setups as well as interesting levels to watch. So let's go ahead and jump into today's update. Starting out, we're going to take a look at Euro Dollar. Now what you can see is our continued bull flag here that we have been talking about. You can see on Monday, I believe it was, we talked about this potential bull flag that we are seeing here on Euro Dollar. Still holding that structure. We will see if we can get some sort of break, but I think that if we do start to see some sort of break of this structure, we may see a continued move to the upside. For example, if we do break above, we retest and potentially go long from there. Might be an interesting setup to take advantage of if we can break through this major level of resistance. Next up, we're going to take a look at pound dollar, guys. And what you can see here is the pound did catch some sort of a bounce. You can see we fell lower through those lows, but now retesting that area here that we have talked about on the market updates the last couple times. You can see right here, this level here, this level that was recently broken out from may act as some sort of potential resistance, as it did recently right around this area as well as this area. So we'll see. Right now we are catching a bid on the pound. The pound is moving up. We'll see if this level can hold or if price is going to break out. Now, if it breaks out, we may see a continued push to the upside on pound dollar. Let's assume that if this was to break out, we may get an opportunity to pull back and to join this move on a calculated, kind of low risk entry with probability on our side. If we do start to see some bullishness on the pound, we may see this sort of move actually play out. Next is going to be USD JPY, which did get a bounce here off of the lows. You can see that we came down into this area yesterday. The US dollar was very strong and we saw price rally here just about, 138 pips or so really quickly on this particular move. And you can see now we are kind of pulling back here. Will be interesting to see if we bring it down to a 1 hour chart. Will be interesting to see if one of these Fibonacci levels actually comes into play. You can see I drag my Fibonacci level from low to high, and you can see that if price pulls back maybe down to this 618, we might have an interesting opportunity to get involved there, as we do have some structural levels. If we look left, you can see that this general area here may act as a potential support. We'll go ahead and make that light green just for simplicity. You can see if price does pull down into that 61.8, we have had reaction in this level before, so we might be able to see some sort of bounce on that structure level. Next up is going to be Brent crude, which did catch a nice bounce here. We did start to see a rise on Brent crude, as we had talked about with this particular trend line. We broke out of that level and now we are really seeing that continuation happen. Now we did find some resistance here in this area right around that structure point that we had talked about on Monday. You can see that this area here, if I make that pink, you can see that this area actually did find some seller resistance, and we may see further downside to come. Now, if we draw a Fibonacci retracement on oil here, you can see we did not quite make it to the 61.8, but the 50% retracement is seemingly wanting to hold right now. Now, if price does make its way back up to this level, we may be able to kind of dive deeper into that level of resistance before finding sellers in that particular area. WTI crude is going to be a similar story. You can see that this trend line here very interestingly broke and continued through that level. Now we did get further up on this particular resistance point that we had talked about. We did break right through this previous level of support, now potential resistance. We are breaking through that. Now this is potentially actually a bullish thing because we've broken through this level and we may see price want to come into this area and find buyer support where resistance once was, right? Resistance becomes potential support here. So we'll look to see if we can get a follow through on WTI crude. Next up is going to be gold, guys, which took a really quick dip on the 4 hour chart there. You can see yesterday with the dollar rising very sharply, we did see the gold kind of plummet really quickly all of a sudden. And now we are seeing price start to slowly rise. The question will be here, are we going to come back to test recent highs, or are we going to actually find some sort of a lower high? So when watching gold right here, I'll zoom in just a little bit. What will be interesting to watch from a trend analysis is going to be, are we going to form a lower high here and roll over, which is actually really bearish, or are we going to actually test the recent high and even break through, which would potentially make signs that this trend is still continuing and that this was just a temporary pullback. We'll see what we get here on coming up on gold next. Euro New Zealand is going to be our next one, guys, which did print a lower high, which is significant because it may be forming some sort of new trend line. In fact, we also kind of have a wedge formation, as we do have kind of this trend line here. So it will be interesting to see if we can break out one way or another on Euro New Zealand. What you'll likely see is price will continue to kind of chop around here, and ultimately we'll see back and forth, and one way or the other we'll get some sort of continuation where we could look to potentially get involved on a retest. That's what we see there on Euro, New Zealand. Next up is New Zealand Yen, which New Zealand was really interesting yesterday because we did get a nice bounce off of the recent lows. You can see we formed a double bottom here on New Zealand Yen. Right around this area, we did get a nice bounce off of this structure low. So you can see that this level has defined itself as our recent bottom, and what will be interesting to see is if ultimately price will rally further from here or if it will come back to test. Now, my first initial reaction is that this market looks to be entering kind of a consolidation phase, so it's not out of the question that we do see this area continue to hold as a short-term resistance, right? And price may want to come back down to test that recent low. Oftentimes in markets, guys, we see price wanting to retest areas of significant support or significant resistance to see if there are still buyers or sellers involved. So that's what I see on New Zealand Yen, probably want to test this recent low again and see if there are still buyers in this area or if that was just, kind of a fluke and that sellers will continue to press down further. Finally, we're going to talk about Euro Pound. Looking here on the weekly time frame, we did catch some sort of resistance here. And what you can see is that after all of this green bar right along this high structural level of resistance, we're starting to see the formation of a red candle, which is significant, guys, because look how many green candles we had in a row. I'm not even going to count that. It's so many green candles in a row on a weekly chart. Now we're finally seeing the start of a red candle. Will this be a bigger move? I think it may be, as we are in very overstretched territory and price may be ready to pull back to a significant level. If it does pull back, we could see price head back down to this recent shoulder as potentially a target number one if you are potentially short along the tops here of this level. Guys, thank you so much for joining me, and we will see you on the next market update.